Welcome everyone to the Weekly Weather Podcast. This is a new show I'm starting up on the channel, so we're going to have a weekly show having a look at all things weather really, whether it's past, present or future. It's just going to be a chilled, relaxed sort of show, not making any massive forecasts on it, that's staying exclusively on the evening videos, but I want it to be interactive as well. So if you want anything to be talked about, anything currently, in the future or past, do make sure you get in the comments, of course. And yeah, this is really a show for all the listeners out there, as I do want to keep this, of course, nice, relaxed and interactive. Now, in this first podcast, we're going to be having a look at sort of winter 2021-22 so far, what's really been happening, the extremes, and what I think is going to be happening in the future. But first, before we get into that, I do want to just set out the general format of this show. So I'm going to be uploading this every Wednesday, early in the morning, so I'll be recording it earlier and uploading it. But initially, it's going to be exclusively for channel members. So I want to add additional content for channel members, of course. Channel membership is $1.99. You can join by hitting the link next to the subscribe button on the channel page or below any videos. I really do appreciate everyone signing up for that. So it really does help me out. I'm trying to keep it as cheap as possible at $1.99, as it's still enough to help support me, but I don't want to make it a massive burden. And of course, you get all the other perks with it: emojis, stickers. You also get replies to comments guaranteed, and of course you get early access to this podcast, as I will be releasing it for free on a Friday, early in the morning as well, as I don't want to make anyone who doesn't want to pay for the membership. I don't want you to leave anyone out, but of course I need to give some exclusive content for the channel members. So yeah, I'll be releasing that Wednesday early for the channel members and Friday for everyone else. And of course, Friday there will be ads and all of that within the video. For Wednesday, though, it will be ad-free for the channel members. So that's just the general format of this podcast. So this first episode, of course, will be going out free on Wednesday to all, just so we get a bit of exposure out there. So we do now get into the main bulk of the podcast. We are going to be talking, of course, about the winter in review. Now, a lot of people have been saying this has been pretty grim winter so far. We haven't had any major cold, sort of widespread cold. Of course, we have had cold conditions, but it has been fairly localised. Now, of course, you kind of start the winter on the 1st of December, but I kind of want to go a little bit further back than that, because the most wintry weather we've had, quite widely really, was the end of November when we had Storm Arwen. Now, people have been saying this has been quite a sort of uneventful winter so far. It very much has been uneventful for widespread snow. But as I'll go through in this podcast, we have actually had quite an eventful winter with a lot of extremes. Now, we started the winter, of course, let's just say end of November really, with Storm Arwen, and of course into December with Storm Bara. So we started on a very stormy note. Both of these storms had some wintry aspects to it as well. Storm Arwen probably had more wintry weather within it. We had weather warnings for snow across Scotland and even down into parts of England as well at times. And of course, we did see significant snowfall there. Probably the main issue, though, was the winds, which I know a lot of people listening to this may have been severely impacted by. We had a red warning out, which is really exceptional. This only happened a few times before for wind over the past decade. So, although the winter, yes, has not been particularly exciting for any snow, for widespread snow, that is, it really has been quite eventful in terms of the wind. A red warning for wind, really exceptional. End of November, combined with snow, we saw some exceptional conditions across parts of Scotland, and even then, cold air digged in behind it, and we got widespread snow at times elsewhere as well, down into northern England. We also had Storm Bara, of course, which again was more wind for parts of Ireland, Southern Ireland, into parts of Wales and the southwest, so different location for the wind. But again, we saw snow on its leading edge across parts of Scotland, and as it moved through, we saw significant rain and wind elsewhere as well. So amber warnings put in force for that, and I think a Met Erin red warning, but of course we cover UK weather here, so we did have a look at that at the time, but not in too much details. I don't know those warnings as well as I do know the Met Office warnings. So yeah, significant wind, really. It was truly exceptional, those two storms, because they weren't sort of typical low-pressure Atlantic systems, because, of course, Storm Arwen came in from the north, and that's why we had the most disruption with it. Because it came in from the north, of course, a lot of the infrastructure, trees, nature had sort of grown up, had matured with a westerly wind, and whenever we had storms, it was more westerly based. So a lot of the trees grew with sort of westerly winds in mind. Whenever we saw strong westerly winds, any trees in the firing line of that were sort of taken down or had stunted growth. However, with the northerly wind, a lot of these trees and stuff hadn't really seen anything like 100-mile-per-hour northerly winds. Truly was exceptional for the end of November, and of course Storm Bara at the start of December. Yeah, so yeah, it was very, very, very exceptional, I must say. So we have to admit that the start of this winter was very, very eventful indeed. Now, throughout December, I think the biggest thing that a lot of people will be sort of thinking about is that high pressure dominance we had, and of course the Christmas flip we had leading up to Christmas. Now, probably around the 10th of December all the way up to the 20th of December, it was pretty nailed on we were going to see something colder in and around Christmas. Initially, of course, it was just still hints, but as we head towards around the 15th to 20th December, as soon as we got into sort of the 7-day time frame, most people forecasting the weather, or at least looking at the models, were pretty sure we were going to see colder weather. Even the Met Office had videos published about colder weather over Christmas. Now, they didn't say there was guaranteed colder or snowy weather, but generally the Met Office don't make a video on something unless they are pretty sure there's going to be some impacts from that. And of course, there was some cold and snow, but across the far north of Scotland, which isn't too unusual, of course, for the winter months. So yeah, it was a truly exceptional flip, and I know a lot of people have got some slack for it, especially people like me who are out there on YouTube. And yeah, I can only apologise for that. I mean, I can't control what the models are doing, but we were pretty sure there was going to be some cold weather. It really did flip overnight across maybe one or two runs. We always had a few of those ensemble runs going for milder conditions, but we'd expect that really at sort of a 5-day time frame. There's always going to be those 2 or 3 ensemble members keeping things milder, and we continually had that, but we disregarded it because sort of 75, 80, 90% on some runs, depending on the exact run, of course, we're going for cold weather. All models were showing that cold weather. Of course, some were a little bit more sceptical, but all showing that high pressure block over Greenland, those northeasterly winds coming in, before they all suddenly just flipped, and we went much, much milder. It was a bit unfortunate, I must say, but yeah, really, really was an annoying flip. Some people who've been forecasting the weather longer than me, I've seen on Twitter, have said it's one of the biggest flips in the last decade, really, within the models, and especially being around Christmas time. It was very unfortunate because it did get a lot of traction within, of course, the YouTube sphere and Twitter as well. The weather community definitely had a lot of traction, so it was very, very unfortunate when it did flip, and that's sort of been the story of the winter so far. We've had really good blocking patterns. The anomaly charts for December, I haven't shown them on the YouTube page, but if you do just have a look on the Met Office charts or just on Twitter, many weather accounts have tweeted about it, but the anomaly charts were very much a proper wintry, cold anomaly charts for December. High pressure generally in the North Atlantic towards Greenland, lower pressure generally towards Scandinavia. And if you looked at just without seeing the sort of the ground weather, you'd think it had been really cold and snowy. But we got very, very limited amounts of that. And of course, that was only really over Northern Hills and parts of Scotland. The main thing we did get was high pressure dominance, especially towards the towards the end of December, and for a lot of time during December we had high pressure dominance as well. Of course, we did have our westerly bouts, but a lot of high pressure around, inversions as well with chillier conditions, especially in the middle of December. But the biggest thing that I think a lot of people found quite grim about December was the cloud and the lack of sunshine. It really was miserable. I've got some facts here that London Heathrow had its cloudiest year on record since 1957, where the records began. It was really, really terrible. Some areas had only minutes of sunshine in the matter of like a week or two. It really was grim, and that really did exacerbate the disappointment with because of the Christmas flip in that colder weather. Now, we did end the end the year with a real mild note as well, with this higher pressure bringing up really quite mild air from the south. And one thing very interestingly, I've seen some people comment about, I mean, it's not particularly important because it's going to change very drastically with the colder weather we're having now, but after one day of January, 1st of January, the CET was provisionally at 12.7 degrees, 9.1 degrees above average, and only June, July, August and September have had warmer CETs than that. So yeah, truly exceptional. Yeah, very, very interesting seeing that, I must say. Yeah, really mild to end the year, of course. And we saw record-breaking temperatures for New Year's Day. 16.2 degrees was seen in St James's Park on New Year's Day. Really, really mild conditions. You'd expect that in the spring, autumn, and if you saw sunshine with that in the spring or autumn, it'd be really quite warm. I've definitely had experiences over the last 5-10 years where as soon as someone says 16, 17 degrees in sort of May or April, May time, some people would start thinking barbecue conditions, especially with the stronger sunshine being really warm. We also had a record minimum of 13.2 degrees, record minimum for New Year's Day, and in the month of January in Chivenor in Devon, 13.2 degrees. You'd not expect that for highs in January and December, but we saw that on New Year's Day as the highest minimum temperature. Really, truly exceptional, I must say so. It's ridiculously high conditions. But it's all going to change at the moment with northerly winds coming in as I record this. One other thing I do want to point out that we had over the course of the New Year's weekend was that bizarre thunderstorm warning we saw on Sunday. Really was a bizarre warning we saw put in from the Met Office. Of course, have a look at the charts in the videos. We do have a look at the precipitation every video, a look at the UK Met Office run 5 days, and of course it was showing heavy rain. Nothing out of the unusual, and it's going to move through pretty quickly. But that morning we saw a Met Office thunderstorm warning put in force. Now, I did have a look at the radar, and there were a few, and I mean a few lightning strikes across out over the channel, and there were a few inland. But that really is nothing too unusual, and I'm surprised there was a thunderstorm warning put in force. Now, of course, some areas did see some very heavy rain with it. Some areas may have even seen some hail. I haven't seen any official reports of hail or major lightning. Did hear some reports of a bit of lightning across the far south coast, but yeah, a yellow thunderstorm warning. Very surprised they put that, and especially in such short notice, because if it's in short notice, they obviously have seen evidence, the Met Office, that there could be significant impacts. Because putting a warning in short notice, not many people are going to see it. Therefore, what I'm always just say that there's no point issuing one at all, because of sort of no one's going to see it, and the only reason they would issue one is if there were really significant impacts that could prevent disruption or loss of life or anything for the few people who do see it, because it was issued only a few hours before the thunderstorms started to, or the alleged thunderstorms and that sort of rain started to impact areas in the south. So yeah, really a bizarre thunderstorm warning. The Met Office do issue some bizarre warnings every now and again, but of course they see much more accurate data than we ever get released to public. So yeah, I'm really interested to see what they saw with that. But of course, there was some heavier rain around. So of course, we can't slag it off too much because there was some issues with it. But yeah, bizarre seeing a thunderstorm warning right at the start of January. But of course, it was that warm, humid air coming up from the southwest that sort of fueled those showers into something more significant. But we're getting a big change this week. Northerly winds are coming in, and as I record this, the northerly winds are arriving for all. Really quite a chilly day as I'm recording this on Tuesday, and tomorrow, Wednesday, when you're listening to this, another really quite cold day. Highs of maybe 3 to 5 degrees quite widely, and currently in London we're having our coldest temperatures in a good few weeks, and it's in the afternoon. So yeah, really weird conditions coming through. Biggest thing with this is going to be the temperatures. It's going to feel really chilly out there. Of course, wind chill around as well with northerly winds. Those are going to be the widespread impacts, and of course there will be some hard overnight frosts over the next few evenings before things start to turn less mild by sort of Thursday time, before we get a polar maritime air mass back in for Friday, which could bring some wild conditions with a lot of wintry showers and heavy rain around as well. And also talk about this northerly wind we've had. Or we're having at the moment. We're seeing quite a lot of snow actually across parts of northern Scotland, and of course by the time you see this we might have actually seen this sort of northwest stream, the Cheshire Streamer, that I'm seeing on some of the models at the moment could produce some accumulations potentially for some. Again, anywhere seeing accumulations from this northerly wind, it's going to be localised, of course, where showers band up, because there isn't looking like there's going to be any significant sort of occluded fronts or convergent zones. It really is going to be luck of the draw where the convection does line up. And of course there are yellow warnings across Scotland at the moment, and quite widespread ice and wind warnings across Scotland as well. And even last night, talking about bizarre thunderstorms we saw on Sunday, we saw some thunder snow across parts of northeast Scotland. Now it's only a few flashes of light, and I don't think I've seen any official reports from it, just radar images of lightning strikes being reported. So yeah, very interesting seeing that across northeast Scotland, and just shows you the convection coming in across the north at the moment. But yeah, we're going to see polar maritime air mass return by the end of this week once this northerly gets pushed out of the way by more of a milder sector. And again, there could be significant snow again with the initial weather front and that air mass coming in behind it. Towards the weekend though, it does look like we're going to continually see more westerly winds, but sort of oscillating between milder and colder sectors. Before early to the middle of next week, it's very much looking like higher pressure is going to be dominating once again. Now, over the last few videos, I have been looking at Scandinavian highs, looking at the models, and some people have said there's no chance that's coming off. And now, the latest runs, not too many ensemble members or runs are going for a Scandinavian high. But they're all going for this high pressure signal over the UK. So we weren't too far off looking at Scandinavian high over the last sort of 3 or 4 days. It definitely is cropping up as a scenario, this higher pressure signal, especially next week and for the foreseeable future. And we have a look at the ensembles, as we'll do in a forecast video this evening as I'm recording this, and of course tomorrow evening after you've listened to this, at this high pressure and where it's going. Now, most of the models between day 7 and day 10 have it over the top of the UK, which would be sort of kind of grim pattern we saw in December. A lot of cloud around, could be seeing an inversion once again, so chilly, cloudy conditions, pretty grim as we still have low levels of light in the day with sunset still in around 4 o'clock. So it would be pretty grim with that. But I'm seeing signals within the models of it shifting further northwards, and of course we'll have a look at ensemble forecasts and the East India ensembles, which show where the general pressure patterns are going to be. A lot of those ensemble members are going for this high pressure retrogressing into the North Atlantic, more up towards Greenland, not showing a Greenland block by any means, but definitely showing the airflow coming in from the northwest or northerly direction, which in January, when we have really quite cold air to our north, could be chilly, and it could produce more wintriness. So anyone saying at the moment that it's going to be a sort of a flat out westerly pattern, I definitely think is being a little bit pessimistic. There are, of course, a lot of charts that are going for generally westerly conditions, but it doesn't look like that is going to be. It's going to be an absolute pest from the west over the next few weeks. I definitely do think there is going to be potential over the next 3 weeks in January and into February as well, especially with the easterly QBO we're seeing, the ENSO, easterly based La Nina. I definitely think there is a very, very high chance we see at least colder conditions to come, similar to this northerly wind, perhaps more sustained than this northerly wind, which is only really lasting 48 hours or so. So it's going to be very interesting seeing what we're going to be having over the next few weeks. But I definitely think there is potential. It's been very hit and miss so far this winter. Of course, with the Christmas flip, we were so close. We were poised to go much, much colder. And I do suspect it will flip our way at some point. That is for a colder scenario. Because I know there are definitely people listening to this who'll be saying, "Oh, I don't want cold conditions. Much rather milder conditions." But I very much think that the majority of people, especially in winter, are very much snow lovers. Of course, don't want any massive disruption, but every year everyone loves a decent snowfall here or there. So we're looking at that over the next few weeks. I definitely do think there is potential, but it is staying in that sort of mid to long range at this stage. Nothing in the short term is leaning towards significant widespread snow at this stage. But I definitely do think there is potential over the next few weeks. And remember, we can get snow all the way into March. Now, it's less sustained, of course, in March, as we're more likely to be having milder conditions in and around any colder patterns, which means soil temperatures are warmer, and general air temperatures are warmer as well, so it becomes more difficult for snow to settle and to be as widespread. And of course, the UV levels are increasing significantly from March all the way to sort of peaking in June. Very, very big rise in UV levels. And that basically means any snow that does settle in the day has a high chance of getting melted away, even if temperatures are below freezing. An interesting fact I've seen before is that I think it's about 19 degrees below freezing, so minus 19 degrees is needed to counteract UV levels in sort of general UV levels in sort of springtime. As of course UV levels, even though it doesn't increase temperature massively, it does get absorbed by the snow, and we do see those temperatures increase in the snow. That's why we see melting, especially in springtime, and even over the North Pole in the summer. It doesn't actually get that much above freezing for a lot of the time, right over the North Pole on the surface. But we still see significant melt because those UV levels increase quite significantly, and that's one thing that happens quite a lot over the spring, and that's why it's unfortunate that the common stat I think a lot of people listening to this will know, it's statistically more likely to be snowy over Easter than it is Christmas. Sort of prime conditions in terms of daylight, UV levels are all in December, January time, whereas we do see statistically more snow in sort of March time. And of course, last winter we saw, of course, heavy snow in February, or at least frigid conditions in February with heavy snow for some, with Storm Darcy, of course. But then we saw sort of the coldest air masses really was in April time with those bitterly cold northerly winds we saw, which gave temperatures widely around 4 or 5 degrees. But I've said this before, if we saw those sort of upper air conditions in January, for example, we would be frigid. I mean, absolutely in the freezer, like minus single digit highs, even in city centres. If we saw that sort of minus 15 temperatures come through, that we were seeing in April coming in from the north. So yeah, it was truly exceptional conditions. And yeah, I'm hopeful for the rest of this winter into the spring. I definitely do think there is going to be colder patterns. By no means am I guaranteeing it, but have a look at the longer term models, what we've seen so far with blocking patterns and the long term climate drivers. I'm not seeing a classic westerly dominated winter. We didn't see that in December, even though it felt westerly for a lot of the time. It actually wasn't in terms of general pressure patterns. It's just we were unfortunate with exact wind directions, and that cold air just not quite getting to the UK. So it's not been a westerly dominated winter so far. We're having a westerly phase at the moment, but I definitely do think that we will see blocking returning. And even if blocking doesn't properly return, I definitely think that at some point the stars are going to align and we will see colder conditions prevail for all over the next few weeks and the next few months. Because as I've said in replying to some comments on the videos where some people have been a bit pessimistic saying winter is over, there is 8 to 10 weeks left of proper wintry conditions, and even the best models we have are not particularly accurate outside 7 to 10 days. ECMWF, GFS very frequently flip at 10 days. Now, of course, we do have a look at the ensembles, and their longer term forecasts do flip as well. And as I've said earlier in this podcast, the longer term forecast from a lot of the ECMWF and GFS ensembles is that high pressure trying to push northwards, trying to introduce fresher air, colder air from north. Again, exact orientation and severity is very difficult, of course, in this time frame. But I definitely do think there is hope there. So I am trying to keep people sort of informed that it is going. It is not guaranteed to go cold, but it's nowhere near guaranteed to stay westerly like it is looking like at the moment. I do truly think we will go cold over the next few weeks, and I think this real weird, bizarre winter we've had so far is going to continue. I think we will see more warm, mild conditions, but I also think we will see some much colder conditions as well. It's going to be, a really weird and interesting next few weeks and next few months to forecast. So make sure you do, stay up to date with, of course, the videos and the weather warnings as well from the Met Office, as I do suspect there will be a lot of interesting weather coming up over the next few weeks. Now, of course, this podcast has been a little bit different from what I'm hoping to do over the next few weeks, because of course I want it to be a bit more interactive with people suggesting what they want to sort of listen about or learn about or whatever. So this first one's just been a bit of a review so far of the winter and my thoughts for the future. But I definitely do want to make it, of course, more interactive, keep it chilled and relaxed, not doing too much forecasting in it, because I know that can get a little bit controversial at times with different views of models, long-term outlooks as well. So we want to keep this nice and chill. So thanks for watching. Make sure you sign up for channel membership if you want this early, and anyone who has signed up for channel membership already, there's quite a few who have already. Just want to thank you for doing that. I really do appreciate it. And of course, I'm trying to release more and more content. And hopefully over the next few weeks and few months, if channel membership continues to grow, I'll be able to get even more content out for you. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. And I'll see you again for another episode next week.